Welcome to the Verse by Verse Bible Study. Thank you for joining us. Please remember to like and to subscribe.
Okay, I'm going to give you the cliff notes here, and then we'll go in and we'll do the whole boring novel here. We're doing chapters 21, 22, and 23. And at first I thought this is too much to do. Maybe I should break it down. But then as I read through the commentaries, there's a reason we're doing these three. And it's because these are the last three judgments of nations, okay? And it's gonna kind of weave itself into a story that goes together. And the cliff notes is, if we don't follow God, then he will bring an end to us. And that's what you're seeing here. He brought an end to Babylon, mighty empire. If this slideshow was working, you would see how many times they were the number one nation. He will bring an end to Persia. He will bring an end to Arabia, Edom. What else is in there? We'll look at it anyway. He almost brought an end to Jerusalem and Judah, but he sent them into captivity instead, and then he saved them, used the Persians to save them. Anyway, we'll get started here. Why should I care about the fall of empires and all this ancient history? That's the first question that comes to mind. Why are we going through all this? And it's because it's an excellent illustration of what is going to happen to us individually, or us as a nation, or us as a church, if we don't follow God. Okay, so that's why it's so important to read this. Okay, the clue here is God is asking Israel a question through Isaiah's prophecies. Why are you acting like everyone around you? You're acting like Babylon. You're acting like Arabia. You're not acting like the light on the hill that I want you to be to other nations. And this is being written about 750 BC, remember? And Isaiah is talking about events that are going to take place right around 539 BC, and when Babylon falls. So he's looking forward 150 years, and you'll see in some cases he's looking forward even farther than that. So keep that in mind. All we're studying today, he's looking forward into the future. And you got to wonder, he wrote this stuff down, and he was seeing it in his mind or in a vision or however he was seeing it, and he wrote it down. I'm sure some of it didn't make sense to him. I'm sure a lot of it didn't make sense to him. But he speaks with great specificity about events, and in one case, even the name of the conqueror of Babylon. So, which is fascinating. Okay. God's called us into Israel. In chapter 22, God will bring Israel to the brink of destruction and then save them. Okay, he's going to bring an end to them. He's going to let them know, if you don't straighten out, I'm going to bring an end to you. But he relents, and actually the Persians send the Israelis home. Okay, countries surrounding Israel, like Babylon, Tyre, Syria, who worship other gods, will meet their end in a dramatic fashion. That is just like God. He doesn't do anything in half measures. He's going to do it in a very dramatic fashion. And we'll talk a little bit about Tyre specifically. Okay. If anybody's paying attention to the news, you might add Gaza, Jordan, and Lebanon to that list, and maybe even Turkey, because Turkey and Syria are all in play, and things are happening there. So I want you to be thinking, Isaiah wants you to be looking at this down the road. He wants you to see what's happening today so we can understand what's going to happen tomorrow. Okay. And of course, if we don't live differently and live with an eye toward God, we're going to meet our end. Okay. So once again, Isaiah uses his gift of prophecy of future events to preach the truth to his current day Israelites. So he's using future events to preach to the Israelites in his day. One of the things that we have trouble with in Isaiah is, are we talking about Isaiah's time? Are we talking about time around Christ? Or are we talking about Revelation? Okay. And one of the things in the commentaries was foretelling versus forthtelling. Isaiah is using foretelling, which is looking at the future, to bring it back and foretell his current day comrades. Okay. So we'll look at it a little, and I'll put a picture on here because I'll use the mountains as an illustration. Isaiah is a little bit different from Jeremiah and Ezekiel in that he uses both of these methods. Foretelling is a prophet seeing far into the future. With a lot of forthtelling, he's using that future to preach the truth to a sinful people. Okay, so he's looking forward to the future and bringing it back to current day. Okay, Isaiah has been described as a vision of a mountain range in which the various peaks are visible, but the valleys between the peaks, which is the period separating the various prophetic insights, are not visible. In other words, We're looking forward, and right now, who knows, we may be seeing the war of Ezekiel coming soon to a globe near you. But we can't see what's between here and there. And we can't see what's between the war of Ezekiel and, the day of the Lord. We can't see all those events. We got a pretty good shot at it through Revelation. But we can't see, we don't see the American Civil War. We don't see the Crusades. We don't see all those things, but we see the critical events. And just to visualize that, one foretelling he's using, he's talking to King Ahaz, and you remember Ahaz wouldn't listen to him on this. He says in Isaiah 7:14, we've already studied this, therefore the Lord himself will give you a sign. Behold, the virgin shall conceive and bear a son and call his name Emmanuel. That's in Isaiah. Okay, so Old Testament, current time, Isaiah is telling, but he's telling King Ahaz, this is going to happen about 750 years from now. He's talking about Jesus. So in Matthew, we see it. Behold, the virgin shall be with child and bear a son, and they will call his name Emmanuel. Wow, he even picked out the name for him. Of course, it's God with us, so it's a thing. So anyway, that's one way of looking at it. And here is just an visual example of foretelling. We see Isaiah standing on this mountaintop. He can see what's going to happen in Tyre. He can see what's going to happen in Babylon. He can see the birth of Christ, and he can even see the day of the Lord and a new heaven and a new earth. We see all those things in Isaiah, right? So, but you can't see anything in the valleys down here. It's not important. It's foggy. There's too much detail. But he does speak with great specificity. Does that help illustrate how we should read Isaiah? Okay, good. Okay, could somebody read 21:1?
A prophecy against the desert by the sea, like whirlwinds sweeping through the southland. An invader comes from the desert, from a land of terror. A dire vision has been shown to me. The traitor betrays, the looter takes loot. Elam attacked, Media lays siege. I will bring to an end all the groaning she calls.
Okay, thank you. The wilderness of the sea is also called the desert of the sea in some of your versions. And the reason they call Babylon the wilderness or the desert of the sea is they lived in a very sandy desert area, but they had a habit of flooding or damming all the ponds and rivers around the city, which is a very small city in Isaiah's time. So it looks like it's sitting in the middle of an ocean. Okay, so that's how we know what that is. As whirlwinds in the south pass through, in Israel or Babylon or any place, if you're getting a wind from the south, it's very hot because it's coming off the desert. So it's not very pleasant. And that's the way the conquering people, they compare that to. And you can see that the treacherous dealer deals treacherously and the plunderer plunders. In other words, they're turning on each other. And here he uses the first thing, Elam and Media, which will, before chapter 23, we'll see them go down too. All its sighing I've made to cease. In other words, something bad is going to happen to Babylon. Now you're wondering, how many times has Babylon been destroyed? Well, okay. Time out Isaiah, the Babylon Empire did not yet exist. Okay. The dam about the waters, I talked about that. Persians in Isaiah's time did not exist. So he's looking forward to 539 and he's identifying the Persians as a people. They don't exist yet. They're made up of two other groups, Elam and Media, who will eventually be destroyed, all basically known as the Medes. They're based out of today's Iran. Okay, winds from the south imply bad. We talked about that. Okay, Babylon was captured by the Persians without a battle. Do you guys remember this story? You remember it fell in one night. They were having a banquet and they called out to the gate, and the gate says, well, we see a chariot with horses and a chariot with camels, but not much else. Well, they had diverted a river that went into Babylon. The water sank, gate was open. They just walked the army through, and they took it without a fight. Okay, this is documented in the British Museum on a reed or a papyrus piece in the British Museum. And I like to say that not because I'm a history nerd, but which I am. But so this is real stuff. This really happened, and it's documented. Okay. Remember, again, this event is about 200 plus years in the future, yet Isaiah describes it as if he was an eyewitness, which I would love to see a movie of how the vision came to him. That's hard to think of. Okay, sidebar 2, interesting, and it tells how accurate and effective Isaiah's prophecies were. Jewish tradition states that the invading king of Persia, remember Cyrus came in and killed Nebuchadnezzar, and he gave the Jews gave him a scroll of Isaiah, because on it, Isaiah predicted the victory. Not only did he predict the victory, okay, oh, this is important. That's why he let them go back to their homeland. Okay, he was so impressed with that. But here's the other neat thing. Isaiah actually named the king in Isaiah 44, 2 through 8, and 45, 1 through 7. He named him by name. So 200, 150, 200 years before the fact. Okay, I'm confused. How many times has Babylon been destroyed? It seems like we've read about it 3 or 4 times already in Isaiah. It only gets destroyed once, but he keeps repeating it because it's such a good metaphor. Okay. This ending is describing the destruction of the Babylonian Empire itself, not the city. Okay, so the city will not be destroyed yet. Cyrus will come in and take it and make it another capital of his own. Okay, yeah, they made it one of their capitals. Okay, after Alexander the Great conquered the Persian, many I think 4 centuries down the road, if I'm right, and correct me if I'm wrong, anybody. At the end of his battles, after he had conquered the known world, he went back to Babylon and made it his home, which I thought was interesting. It must have been a beautiful place. So, but it was wicked. Okay. The final destruction God orchestrated as example to Israel and to those who rebel against God will not take place in the Bible until Jeremiah 50, 51 and Revelation 17, 18, which we studied Revelation here recently. But it's described in Isaiah previous to what we're talking about now in chapter 16. So, let's see.
Kevin,
Okay.
just another sidebar.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of references in the Bible that suggest that the seat of Satan's power is Persia, Iran, that geographical area. I mean, he is the quote small g god of this world. There's a lot of references to the fact that may be kind of the geographical seat of his power, which is if you kind of follow the Bible all the way through, you see these nations rise and fall, but the corruption is always there.
Yeah.
That evil, that corruption seems to always be there.
Yeah, and it's still Babylon. Anytime you see Babylon in scripture, you think of world religion, you think of wickedness, you think of arrogance and pride and power. But yeah, I think you're right that when if we could see the spiritual world, we would see Satan probably headquartered somewhere around Babylon. Yeah.
Wasn't there a group or a person that in modern times was going to rebuild?
Yeah,
and
Saddam Hussein
reestablish
was. Yeah,
Babylon?
yeah, Saddam Hussein
But
tried.
it fell apart.
Yeah,
Thank
we had,
goodness.
I don't know if you were here that week, but I showed you some slides of some of the stuff he rebuilt, but he didn't get very far. Okay, so, somebody want to read 21, 3 through 4?
At this, my body is racked with pain. Pangs seize me, like those of a woman in labor. I am staggered by what I hear. I am bewildered by what I see. My heart falters, fear makes me tremble. The twilight I longed for has become a horror to me.
Okay, and you can see Isaiah, why is he so upset that Babylon's falling? I mean, it's 150 years in the future. He's not really personally, but what he's afraid of is he sees if this great empire can fall, Israel can fall. If this king can fall, I can fall. So he's more about what it means to him. So he's shocked mostly by how quickly a great empire can end. He's also probably shocked by the fact that after that happens, there's not going to be any empire protecting Israel from the Assyrians, and they're going to pay for it. Okay, so God used the Babylonians to judge Israel, the Persians to judge Babylon, and the Persians as his vehicle of mercy once again to Israel. Remember, they sent him home. So he's using the nations. That's why I had that up with all the biggest empires of each century. Okay. Isaiah and later Daniel in person. Daniel actually saw it. Remember, he was captive in Babylon. He saw this fall in person. So they both see how God will use kind of this method of using a cosmic carrot and stick to remind us of the way we should go. Okay, and we see them all fall. Okay, could somebody read 21, 5 through 9?
They set the tables, they spread the rugs, they eat, they drink. Get up, you officers, oil the shields. This is what the Lord says to me. Go, post a lookout and have him report what he sees. When he sees chariots with teams of horses, riders on donkeys or riders on camels, let him be alert, fully alert. And the lookout shouted, Day after day, my Lord, I stand on the watchtower. Every night I stay at my post. Look, here comes a man in a chariot with a team of horses, and he gives back the answer. Babylon has fallen, has fallen. All the images of its gods lie shattered on the ground.
Yeah. Couple of things here. Thank you. When this happened, Cyrus has got a big banquet. If you remember, he had taken all the artifacts out of the Jewish temple and brought them into this room where he's having his feast. And this is one where the hand appears and writes on the wall. Okay, that's the same feast. Okay, and then that very night he gets conquered and killed. Okay, so he's asking what the watchman sees on the wall. They think that these walls might have been as much as 300 foot tall, which is huge. So the watchman looks out and he says, well, I see a couple of chariots with donkeys and a couple of chariots with camels. And maybe he didn't look far enough. He couldn't bend over far enough to see because of the height of the wall was working against him. But what that would have told him, if he would have seen a lot of chariots with donkeys and a lot of chariots with horses, he would have said, Persians ride chariots with horses and Medes ride chariots with donkeys. We got the enemy at the gates, in this case, coming through the gate. Okay. So the other thing that he's saying, they weren't alert. They didn't even think about it. They thought themselves impenetrable, invincible, and then the enemy walked right in because they weren't on guard. Okay. The other thing that stands out here, Babylon is fallen, and I'll talk about that in a minute, but all the carved images of her gods he has broken on the ground. This is real interesting because when the Persians would have taken over, what happened typically is a Persian would have gone in and accepted the Babylon gods in addition to their own, and maybe given them Persian names or something. But then when the Romans came along, they would have accepted the Persians and the Babylon's gods. And then when the Greeks came along, they would have got done the same thing. In other words, the pantheon of gods would have grown. They wouldn't have broken the idols. They would have worshiped those idols. Okay, so maybe this is Isaiah looking forward into Revelation, and that's when the idols will fall. All the demonic powers will be broken. Okay. Some of these I repeat. The watchman for the Lord is Isaiah, by the way. That's the other feed. They're talking about the horse chariots are Persians, camel chariots are Medes. Said Babylon has fallen, and this was repeated in Revelation. It's said twice to refer to as a city and a way of life. Remember, we think of this as a world religion. Okay. And then that's the point about the gods. We're probably looking forward to an end times event. Okay. Isaiah 21:10. Let me just read it. Oh, my threshing and the grain of my floor, that which I have heard from the Lord of hosts, the God of Israel, I have declared to you. What falls on the threshing room floor? The good stuff. All the chaff and everything falls off to the side and they get rid of it. Okay, so he's referring to the people of Israel, the good stuff, the product of his goodness. Okay, so Isaiah here is also pointing out the veracity of his vision. In other words, but I'm telling you, I saw. The burden against Edom and Duma. Somebody want to read Isaiah 21:11-12?
A prophecy against Duma, someone calls to me from Seir. Watchman, what is left of the night? Watchman, what is left of the night? The watchman replies, morning is coming, but also the night. If you would ask, then ask and come back yet again. Okay.
You can see they're calling this against Duma, which is Edom, and Seir is a big city in that town. I'll just do these. Okay. The Edomites had helped Babylon grow in power, and Seir, which I misspelled there, Sier, was a main city there. Okay. He's telling them there's two levels when he says, if you inquire, return, come back. There's two levels here. He's saying things have changed in Babylon. You built your power on the Babylonians. Go back and deal with the new bosses if you think you can. But that's an invitation to salvation too. That's looking forward to Jesus. If you inquire, return, come back. Okay, so that's saying repent. Okay, so little double double meaning there. Day and night. Day is pretty much a depiction of the light of salvation. Okay, so they look out and they say, it's dark out, dark in my soul, but light is coming, morning is coming. Okay, return, come back. We just talked about that. Okay. Lesson here is that when people are aligned with false gods and bad practices fail, so do those who have attached themselves to them. But there's a famous Medal of Honor winner who had a pretty rough life. Manny Benavides, I think. But his parents always told him, show me with who you walk and I'll show you who you are. Okay, so the Edomites were trading with the Babylonians and building their power. They were just as guilty as the Babylonians. Okay, 21:13 through 15. Various Arabian lands. Let me look at that, 13 through 15. The burden against Arabia. In the forest in Arabia, you will lodge. O you traveling companies of Dedanites, and O inhabitants of the land of Tema, bring water to him who is thirsty. With their bread they met him who fled, for they fled from the swords of the drawn sword, from the bent bow, from the distress of war, nor dead in battle. The intimation here by most commentarians is these people had lent their people, particularly a group of archers that were very skilled, and they lent, maybe they had met the Persians and the Medes before they got to Babylon and tried to slow them down, and most of the archers were killed. So now these people who were kind of nomadic, but they stayed in the same area in Arabia, they now are going to have trouble finding food and water. And the land, which was very fertile, Kedar, which will come up here in verse 16, they'll be kicked out of Kedar. It'll fail within 1 year. They will fail. Okay, Kedar. Here we go. So, what I just was talking about. So, all these groups made their living by trade and worshipped idols, not God. These idols represented what they wanted: wealth via trade. Okay, so this was their God. Okay. Okay. Again, the message is that nations that rose because of their association with Babylon fell when Babylon fell. A lot of bad people get found out. Somebody want to read Isaiah 22, 1 and 2? Anybody?
Prophecy against the valley of vision. What troubles you now that you have all gone up on the roofs, you town so full of commotion, you city of tumult and revelry? Your slain were not killed by the sword, nor did they die in battle.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, we're starting to talk about Jerusalem, and the Valley of Vision refers to the fact that so many prophets are in Israel. Okay, and that's what that refers to. Now they've all gone up to the rooftops and they're celebrating. They're about to be conquered, and they're celebrating. They think, well, if we're conquered, to eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow we die. That's actually a quote out of the Bible, and it'll be repeated again in Revelation. So they're not even fighting. They're not even making real preparations to get that, to get their city ready for it. But they do make some, but they don't rely on God when they do it. That's their sin. They're so far away from God that they do not rely on God, and they don't pray and fall on their faces and ask for help. Okay, so what ails you now that you have all gone up to the rooftops? Okay, they're not going to be slain. They're going to be taken captive. If they're lucky, they're going to be taken captive, but they aren't slain. They're just taken captive by the Babylonians and taken to many of them are taken to Babylon. Okay, Isaiah is remonstrating the future Israel for celebrating the demise of all these nations surrounding them because they're guilty of walking away from the one true God as well. Okay, that's why Jerusalem is being judged, and they will be taken into captivity in Babylon. Okay. The men of Israel will not be slain, but starved out when the Babylonians surround them in 100, 200 years in the future. I keep saying that because I want you to think. He's not talking about current day. He's talking about, 100 and 200 years down the road. Okay. And let's go ahead and read 3, 4, and 5, I believe. Somebody?
All your leaders have fled together. They have been captured without using the bow. All you who were caught were taken prisoner together, having fled while the enemy was still far away. Therefore I said, turn away from me, let me weep bitterly. Do not try to console me over the destruction of my people. The Lord Almighty, has a day of tumult and trampling and terror in the valley of vision, a day of battering down the walls, and of crying out to the mountains.
Okay. Okay, yeah, and the daughter of my people is Jerusalem. So Jerusalem is being plundered. Now, they did walk around, and we'll see a picture of Jerusalem and the city of David. They believe that when this happened, that they had allowed their defenses to fall down in places, and they'd made cursory efforts to repair their walls, but not really, and it allowed the Babylonians to come in and take them very easily. But they didn't make any effort. Some of them fled, some of them just let it happen. So that's what's going on here. Okay, all the leaders have fled from the towns in Israel into Jerusalem. They've left their own villages and towns defenseless. Now they're in Jerusalem. Well, you think they'd be helping out with the defense there? No, they didn't make any effort to help with the defense of Jerusalem. Okay, they're eventually captured as they attempt to escape Jerusalem. So nobody really gets away into the mountains or anything. They're all captured. Okay, so Isaiah is weeping at this point for his vision of the destruction of his homeland. He knows it's a vision that's going to happen. Okay. Babylonians eventually starved Jerusalem into submission. We talked about that. Now, I wanted to get a picture in my mind of what was going on here. So if somebody wants to read, let's see, that would be 6 through 9. Yeah, 6 through 9.
Everyone takes up the quiver with her charioteers and horses. Her uncovers the shield. Their choicest valleys are full of chariots, and horsemen are posted at the city gates. The defenses of Judah are stripped away, and you looked in that day to the weapons of the palace of the forest. You saw that the city of David had many breaches in its defenses and stored up water in the lower pool.
Okay. A couple of things here. Apparently, this is a massive army. Lots of horses, lots of men, lots of chariots. Didn't stand a chance. The other thing is he removed the protection of Judah. In other words, God's letting this happen. This is his judgment. And the last thing, the house of the forest was their armory. That was where they stored weapons. Some of them will probably be about 100 years old because Jerusalem lived in peace for a while, and they really haven't, kept up with everything. So who knows whether the shafts on the spears were good, whether the swords were rusty or whatever. But they grabbed the armor and did what they could. But they also said, you saw the damage to the city of David. Commentaries speculate that the walls had fallen in places and made it very easy for them to come through. You gathered the waters of the lower pool. If you look down at the bottom of the screen on the left-hand side of the city of David, there are some pools down there, and I got a better picture here next. So the lower walled area is the city of David. I forget what the middle one is called, but then you have the Temple Mount up on top. But they are preparing for siege because they're gathering waters into the lower pool. And you see there where the city of David is, and you see on the lower left, that's where the lower pool, that's where they gather water to resist the siege for a while. In Isaiah 22, 10, 11, you numbered the houses of Jerusalem and the houses you broke down to fortify the wall. They were trying to quickly fortify them when this was happening. Okay, you also made a reservoir between the two walls for the water of the old pool, but you did not look to the maker. This is the sin that caused this judgment. Even though they got their armor out and their spears and they tried to repair the walls, they didn't stop and throw themselves down on their faces and call on the Lord. So that's why this judgment has happened. Nor did you have respect for him who fashioned it long ago. This is God's city, and he is, so it gives you an idea what's going on. And then I got, this is almost a sidebar. I was sitting there, how'd they fill this pool? There's a tunnel called Hezekiah's Tunnel. It's also called Solomon's Tunnel. It's also called Siloam Tunnel, because it has something to do with the pool of Siloam. But they brought it in from a spring underground, and it's 45, I think it's 45 full, and filled up this pool down here in the lower city. So that's how they did it. And that's like I said, another sidebar. Okay. Somebody want to read Isaiah? Do we just read it? No. Let's read 22, 12 through 13.
The Lord Almighty called you on that day to weep and to wail, to tear out your hair and put on sackcloth. But see, there is joy and revelry, slaughtering of cattle and killing of sheep, eating of meat and drinking of wine. Let us eat and drink, you say, for tomorrow we die.
So instead of repenting, which is what the Lord wants, they're partying, they're getting drunk and eating all the food they can. So again, part of their sin, sackcloth, of course, would be a sign of mourning, with their mourning for themselves that they're going to die. So it's pretty irresponsible. It just shows how far they've gotten away from God. Okay. And this is not good news in 22:14. And then it was revealed in my hearing by the Lord of hosts, surely for this iniquity there will be no atonement for you, even to your death. That's pretty final. If you're waiting around for my forgiveness, it's not coming. You can go ahead and die and live in this iniquity. Okay. And let's see, 22:15 through 19.
Thus says the Lord God of hosts, go, proceed to this steward, to Shebna, who is over the house, and say, what have you here, and whom have you here, that you have him a sepulchre here, as he who hews himself a sepulchre on high? Who carves a tomb for himself in rock? Indeed, the Lord will throw you away violently, O mighty man, and will surely seize you. He will surely turn violently and toss you like a ball into a large country. There you shall die, and there your glorious chariots shall be the shame of your master's house. So I will drive you out of your office, and from your position he will pull you down.
Okay. Good. Now well, I got to admit, when I first started to read this, I go like, the judgment on Shebna, what is that about? And then it's Eliakim, there's nothing there. It's one of those things you're tempted to read past, like we talk about, and you go, that's the thing I need to dig into. And this is really pretty neat. Shebna is a minor official in Jerusalem. He's building a monument to himself by building a grave before he dies. Okay, and the Lord says, no, you can't build this to make yourself a monument after you're dead about what a great person you are. You need to be serving your people. So he says, I'm going to chuck you out of this position. I'm going to chuck you out of Jerusalem. I'm going to take away everything you have. And then I'm going to slow down a second. Isaiah's making this judgment on a more individual basis. He's talking about Jerusalem now. Now he's talking about Shebna. Okay. He's building a monument to himself. An elaborate grave is interpreted here as an attempt to have his name live beyond death. See how rich I was? See how powerful I was? I can build this grave. That's a sign of wealth. Okay. The specter of invasion doesn't even affect his thinking. He's lucky if he's lucky, he won't be killed outright, but carried off into captivity. As it is, he's thrown out of Jerusalem by God. Okay, God throws him out and pulls him down. Okay, so here's the interesting one. I love this part of it. So somebody want to read 22:20 through 25?
In that day I will summon my servant Eliakim, son of Hilkiah. I will clothe him with your robe and fasten your sash around him and hand your authority over to him. He will be a father to those who live in Jerusalem and to the house of Judah. I will place on his shoulder the key to the house of David. What he opens, no one can shut, and what he shuts, no one can open. I will drive him like a peg into a firm place. He will be a seat of honor for the house of his father. All of the glory of his family will hang on him, its offspring and offshoots, all its lesser vessels from the bowls of the jars. In that day, declares the Lord Almighty, the peg driven into the firm place will give way. It will be sheared off and will fall, and the load hanging on it will be cut down. The Lord has spoken.
Okay, thank you. That's a long passage, but I can't believe I read through this thing 3 or 4 times and the significance didn't hit me. And all of a sudden, I go like, and the key of the house of David, wait a minute, and he will become a glorious throne to his father. This is the same position that Shebna had, but now Eliakim has it, but he does a better job with it. And we'll talk about that. The Lord's going to clothe Eliakim, I've misspelled it there, in Shebna's robes. He's taken everything away from Shebna and given it to Eliakim. Okay, he'll give I misspelled this totally. He will give Eliakim full authority. He will be a father to all people in Jerusalem and Judea. The key mention gives him access to the king. This ringing a bell with anybody yet? Okay. What he opens, no one can shut, and what he closes, no one can open. Remember the scrolls in Revelation? Okay. He'll be fastened in place as securely as a peg in a wall. Okay. He will have a glorious throne before his Father. That should ring a bell. Okay. Okay. All vessels, which are people, and the glory of his Father's house will be hung on the peg. Okay. It's all going to be hung on his shoulders. He'll have all that. Okay. But eventually the peg will shear and the burden will fall. We think maybe of the crucifixion, but it's not it. Who is this guy? The clue, Eliakim, means resurrection of God. Okay, so this is a picture of Christ. It is not Christ. He's looking 5 to 539, not all the way to 1 AD or 7 AD. So, and the reason we know that Eliakim is not going to be Christ, but he's only a foreshadowing of Christ, is because the peg eventually falls, because only Emmanuel can bear the burden and glory forever. Okay, Emmanuel is 750 years from Isaiah, 539 years from Eliakim. I wanted to give you an idea of where everything was, and I don't have my pointer, but you can see those two red letters, Tyre. The lower one is Tyre, the top one is Sidon. The picture to the right is the second incarnation of Tyre after Nebuchadnezzar destroyed the seaside town. And you'll see something here in a minute, and it'll show you. But basically, Tyre today, it's like there's a seacoast, okay, and then Tyre looks like kind of like this. It's out on a peninsula. And the reason for that is, get over here where you can see, originally, Tyre was here. Nebuchadnezzar came in, spent many years sieging it, finally broke in, destroyed the town, but when he walked in, there were no citizens there. All the wealth and all the citizens had moved out to an island and started to fortify it. Nebuchadnezzar didn't have a navy, so he couldn't get to it from there. So, why does it look like this today? Well, Babylonians finally gave up and went away, and that's what they left. Okay? Alexander the Great comes along, takes all the rubble from the old city of Tyre, builds a peninsula with siege towers, pushes out to the island, takes the city of Tyre. Okay, so that's why it looks like that today. Now, Tyre is not too many miles north of the Israeli border today. It's, a matter of fact, it's very much near the activity that's been going on in Lebanon. So it's active today, but it's a beautiful city now. There's ruins are still there, but it's a beautiful city right now. It's intact. Okay, this is Alexander the Great using the ruins of the previous city to come out to the new Tyre that's on the island, and you can see he will eventually take it. But if I remember right, and I think I remember right, he actually while they were bringing the siege towers up to the wall so they could get in that way, some of his guys went around in a boat, even though they didn't have a navy either. They found a weak point in the wall, collapsed it, and went in that way. So pretty interesting. Okay, so now we're going to talk about Tyre. Okay, somebody want to read Isaiah 23, 1 through 8? The burden against Tyre. Wail, you ships of Tarshish, for it is laid waste, so that there is no house, no harbor from the land of Cyprus. It is revealed to them. Be still, you inhabitants of the coastland, you merchants of Sidon, whom those who cross the sea have filled. And on the great waters, the grain of Shihor, the harvest of the river is her revenue, and she is a marketplace for the nations. Be ashamed, O Sidon, for the sea has spoken, the strength of the sea, saying, I do not labor, nor bring forth children, nor do I rear young men, nor bring up virgins. When the report reaches Egypt, they will also be in agony at the report of Tyre. Cross over to Tarshish, wail, you inhabitants of the coastland. Is this your joyous city, whose antiquity is from ancient days, whose feet carried her far off to dwell? Who has taken this counsel against Tyre, the crowning city, whose merchants are princes, whose traders are the honorable of the earth? Okay, and there's a lot in here. Okay, first of all, they're talking about Sidon. You better be worried because you're the sister city of Tyre. They both became wealthy, and the way they became wealthy is they both had large merchant fleets, and they both carried grain that was grown in the coastal or the what do they call it, the estuary area of the Nile River. It flooded every year, made the land very fertile, and they grew a lot of grain. Tyre and Sidon took it all over the Mediterranean. That's how they made their money, and they became exceedingly wealthy. So that's what they're talking about. On the great waters, the grain of Shihor. Shihor is another word for Egypt. The harvest of the river is what they're talking about, the grain there. And she is a marketplace for the nations. And talking about Tyre. Okay. And same thing is going to happen to Sidon eventually. But one thing they put in here, it says, I do not labor nor bring forth children. What they were talking about, they made their money on the seas. They didn't actually produce anything themselves. Okay, so and that's what they're referring to there. They traded with other people. Sometimes their dealings were not as honorable as you might like. So that's part of their problem. But they worship money and wealth, and any god that doesn't bring them money and wealth, they don't care about. Okay, and the way they crown their princes, the merchants are princes, and the traders are the honorable of the earth. These people became the people of power and the ones that were worshipped and honored because they made money. Okay, so not that God doesn't want us to be successful. Okay, God wants us to be successful, but if you replace success with God, that's what happened here. Verse 10, overflow through your land like the river, O daughter of Tarshish. They're saying daughter of Tarshish, Sidon and Tyre are both daughters of Tarshish because they're taking them all the way over there. Tarshish is not going to have any way to get grain now, so that's bad. Okay, so they're basically being told at this point to plow the land that Tyre used to sit on. Okay, this peninsula doesn't exist yet, and the island that they haven't inhabited yet. All this is just rubble and destruction. And it's saying if you want to make money, you better plow the land there and plant something because the grain is not going to be coming to you from Egypt anymore. Okay, because you have no way to transport it. So eventually, and it refers in here that Tyre is going to be down for about 70 years. That's going to be how long it's going to be before they can get out to that island, rebuild, and start business again. They'll never grow like they did before. They will never be the great power that they were before. Okay. Somebody want to read 11 through 14?
The Lord has stretched out his hand over the sea and made its kingdoms tremble. He has given an order concerning Phoenicia that her fortresses be destroyed. He said, no more of your reveling, virgin daughter of Sidon, now crushed. Up, cross over to Cyprus. Even there you will find no rest. Look at the land of the Babylonians, this people that is now of no account. The Assyrians have made it a place for desert creatures. They raised up their siege towers. They swept its fortresses bare and turned it into a ruin. Wail, you ships of Tarshish, your fortress is destroyed.
Yeah. Basically, what they're saying is, you better get on over to Cyprus, you survivors. You better get on over to Cyprus. It won't be any better for you over there, but it won't be much better over there for you. Things are going to be tough over there too. And just basically, the enemy has made it a wasteland. Okay, yeah. Verse 15 and 16. This is what it's talking. And now it shall come to pass that in that day that Tyre will be forgotten 70 years, according to the days of one king. It's about the lifetime of an average king in those days. At the end of 70 years, it will happen to Tyre, as in the song of the harlot. Take a harp, go to the city, you forgotten harlot. Make sweet melody, sing many songs that you may be remembered. They're forgotten harlot. They're talking about Tyre. Okay. Now, in the Old Testament, the temple was not allowed to receive wages earned by prostitution. That was against Jewish law. But Tyre will be able to do that. They're going to go back to their business practices, but they will honor God. They've learned their lesson a little bit. And in verse 17 and 18, it talks about, and it shall be at the end of 70 years, the Lord will deal with Tyre. She will return to her hire. She's going to come back to a little bit of her glory and commit fornication with all the kingdoms of the world on the face of the earth. But their business practices aren't going to get much better. Okay. Her gain and her pay will be set apart for the Lord. They're going to tithe. That's amazing. They've been corrected. Okay. It will not be treasured nor laid up. In other words, they won't hoard it and worship it like they did. For her gain will be those who dwell before the Lord. In other words, those who dwell before the Lord are going to be rewarded to eat sufficiently, not extravagantly, and for fine clothing. Okay. Takeaways. Okay. I think I gave you the clip notes first. That these are all about people who didn't worship the Lord, or in Jerusalem's case, didn't worship the Lord but could be saved. They will meet their end, and that's what's going to happen here. The proclamation against Babylon was about pride, arrogance, and idolatry, and also we see it now as a symbol of world religion. It was also about worshiping the things of this world. Okay. Babylon is always a symbol of worldliness in Scripture. The proclamation against Edom, Kedar, and Arabia are also a part of their interrelationship with Babylon. In other words, show me with whom you walk, and I'll show you who you are. And the lack of morals that they had in their business dealing. Proclamation against Jerusalem is because they have turned their backs on God and refused to depend on Him in preparing for the defense of their homeland. Boy. The proclamation against Tyre is because they proclaimed wealth and had no time for any God that will not bring wealth to them. Okay, sidebar 3. At the end of this lesson, we're 1/3 of the way through Isaiah. And that's it.